Live from the Delmonico Steakhouse in the beautiful Riviera Hotel and Casino, located along the fabulous Las Vegas Strip, it's the Anthony DiMartini Show.
Can you imagine what it must be like working undercover for decades around some of the most notorious and vicious mobsters organized crime has ever produced? My next guest not only can imagine it, he did it. And he wrote a book about it called Nobody Cares and What I Did About It. Would you please welcome Mr. Red Wemette?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. I'm honored by your presence. I was reading your book, and I suggest everybody do it. Nobody Cares and What I Did About It. It's available at redwemette.com. You can get your own autographed copy there, or you can get it wherever books are sold, Amazon, Kindle, and all those places. But I highly recommend getting it from redwemette.com because he will autograph it for you, like he did for me. And so,
thank you for your purchase. I hope you enjoyed it.
I did. Now I'm bookmarking and saving little bits and pieces for other videos, and it's an enjoyable book. And I have to ask, you served your country in Vietnam as a Marine, and then you come back to Chicago and somehow get involved in the organized crime. And that's not typically the standard route for career advancement. I mean, what happened something must have happened that precipitated you wanting to get in and get these guys. What caused that?
After I started to work at outfit bars, tending bar, I used to see things that weren't right. I used to see things that people got beat up, some people got killed. I used to see things I didn't like. And when the opportunity, I described it in the book, when the opportunity came that a bartender was talking to an FBI agent, John Osborne, he took the card and he tossed it in the garbage can. And I picked it up and put it in my pocket, went home and decided, I'll call this guy. And when I did, we didn't have caller ID in those days or anything. There was no way he could check me out. But he said he would check me out, and he asked for my phone number, and I said, no, I'll get back to you. And I did. And we prearranged an agreement at the Lion House at the Lincoln Park Zoo. And that way it was a public meeting,
Right.
And I couldn't be cornered into anything that I didn't want to do. I was cautious, very cautious.
Right. But I mean, you took a substantial risk personally by getting involved in that type of an operation. And
I really didn't think of it that way. I thought, first of all, I kind of had a Superman complex.
Well, yeah, Marine from Vietnam. I don't like.
Well, yeah, and I saw these guys were sloppy compared to professionals. I mean, they call themselves professionals, but compared to what I saw, it was like a walk in the park. I mean,
right.
These guys weren't that well educated, number one. Not many of them passed high school, if they went to past high school.
Right. Well, you would be one of very few that would consider that a walk in the park. I have to tell you that most people would have been terrified in most instances, and I wanted to get into that. So not only did
any vet would probably understand that, because being in the military and going overseas, when you come back to America, it's not like, I mean, they have different values overseas. They really don't care.
Right.
So you're really on your guard all the time. And when you come back and you see people that are sloppy about what they do, and I don't know.
Yeah.
They really don't care. They sell fear. They sell fear to you. They try to talk you into fear. Fear is everything. If they can control you with fear, that's it.
And it works 99% of the time, I would say. Or at least a good portion.
I think it did.
Yeah.
I think it did.
Now, speaking of that, you, for people that might not know, Tony Spelatro, otherwise known as Anthony the Ant Spelatro, but I think in the circle he was pretty much always referred to as the little guy. You were pretty honestly good friends with Mr. Spelatro. I mean, he would come to your house unannounced, as very few would, and you were, I wonder if he thought of you as sort of a connection to the normal world outside of crime, and he could just confide in you and be a friend with you without having to talk about organized crime things. Do you think that might be the reason why you were so close?
Yeah. Yeah, because we never talked about violence or stuff like that. We just were friends. I mean, I'm sure you have buddies that you hang out with, have a drink with, and that was it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I gather, because I heard a few, anecdotally, I heard that, he was at the point pretty much on the edge of, he wanted to be in the Mafia, he wanted to get to the top, but especially towards the end, he kind of wanted to be a regular person again. And I just wonder if he didn't see you as his connection to the regular world without having to, deal with that type of business, the organized crime business. Just two guys that would talk about sports or, how things are. And so you probably had an insight that very few had in that respect.
Yeah, it was easy going. It was a personal relationship. It wasn't like it was. The other guys were like, they came to me to talk about business.
Right.
What do you think about this? What do you think about that? Or we'd like you to do this. We'd like you to do that. He never came there with that attitude. He just
I remember you mentioned that he would, whenever he was in town, your house was the first place he'd stop unannounced. But
I don't know if it's the first place, but he just stopped by, and
but he always made it a point.
He always shocked me when he came by, because I was usually called by somebody and say, "Hey, is it okay?" Down the street from where I used to live was on the corner of Kedzie and Irving Park was Harris Pies. Right. And Marshall Cafano, he used to hang out there way back when at Harris Pies. And a lot of guys, you could meet him. You could go down there and meet him at the corner. But he'd park like a block away or someplace, and he'd walk. And he'd come up to the door and ring the doorbell. And I was kind of like shocked, but it was like you. I'd go, "Hey, come on."
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's an insight that very few people probably had with him. I mean, aside maybe from his brothers, or, I mean, I think anyone else would have known him on a level with organized crime. They wouldn't have, or as an adversary like in law enforcement, they didn't. I mean, you guys were such good friends that you at one time actually told him that you were working undercover, and he never held it against you. Is that right?
No, he never did.
Yeah. So, I mean, I only know him because I waited on him a couple of times, and I didn't know him, but I always considered him to be the most relaxed, down-to-earth one that I'd ever met of all that group.
He was easygoing, and he had a funny sense of humor. He used to tell me jokes. I used to tell him jokes. That's just the way it was.
Right. And I think, I don't remember how many brothers there were. I know Dr. Pat worked on everybody's teeth. His brother's a dentist. I think all the others chose a different career path, and Pat was pretty much the only doctor in the house.
No, Michael kind of followed his path.
Well, he was an actor, but
he kind of rode on Tony's coattails.
Well, no, I'm I'm saying of all the brothers, only Pat was the one that really wasn't involved in organized crime for the most part, right? I mean,
I don't know. I know Victor was involved very heavily.
Really? So I mean, that's what of all those brothers.
Victor was involved with betting parlors, all kinds of scams and murders. So it was what it was.
He's deceased now, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, is he? Yeah. I think maybe Pat's the only one left. Do you suppose that would be the case?
I don't know. The last time I saw Pat was at Family Secrets in 2008. So.
Right.
What is it? 2021. Pat's getting on in his years.
15 years, yeah. Wow. He's got to be up there now. So yeah, I also think it's important to clarify. You got a lot of static about Peterson-Schustler murders because you didn't come forward fast enough and all this, but people don't realize that you were working undercover and you were helping to stop hundreds of murders from occurring. And law enforcement, particularly federal, said, hey, yes, it's a heinous crime to kill 3 little boys and we'd like to get this guy off the street, but on the other hand, where you're at now will provide us the opportunity to prevent hundreds of murders. So I can understand that. And you eventually did get this guy, and you put him in jail for the rest of his miserable life. However, it was too short, I think most people would say. But he did die in prison as a result of your effort. So I think people should, mellow out with some of these, things that they say, because I don't think any of them would have the cojones to do what you did on either side of that story, whether it was the Peterson-Schustler murders or the organized crime. There's very few people that would have put themselves in a position like that. Even law enforcement doesn't like to do it. So here's an average citizen that did it. So for that, you should be commended for it, I think, personally.
The Schustler family thanked me. Long time ago, 2016.
Right.
I was in contact with them on Facebook, and I called them on the cell phone, and they answered. We talked for maybe 2-3 hours. They had a lot of questions, and they said they watched me on the witness stand every day of the trial. They watched everybody on the witness stand, and they thanked me. They were very grateful.
Well, it holds a record for being the oldest cold case to ever result in a conviction, if I'm not mistaken, right? It was.
Now you kind of got to narrow it down. It was a triple homicide.
Right.
So it's the oldest triple homicide that was ever tried and convicted in the United States.
Because the actual murders happened in 1958, is that right? Or 55? 55. So till when was he convicted? 2007, something like that?
No, the first time he was convicted was
95.
95.
But he stayed out until a certain time, and then you guys.
No, he stayed in.
Oh, did he?
He was convicted. He won an appeal. And they brought him back in 2002 on the appeal, and he lost it again.
Oh, so he died not too long after 2008. 2008. So, well, he died in a good place for a person of that ilk.
Pontiac Penitentiary. Back at John Martino made a statement. He was the best agent I ever worked with, John Martino. He looked back, or he made a statement that he's sorry he ever went on the air at all. But he made a statement that he wished he had lived longer to suffer in prison.
Yeah.
And he did suffer in prison. As a child molester.
Yeah, they don't like that.
His leg was broken his hip was broken because he fell on the ice. His teeth were missing. I mean, there were a lot of things. When I saw him in court, he really didn't look that good. I mean, he was really messed up. They did not treat him. They didn't put him in confinement. And when they did finally put him in prison, he went to Pontiac, which is not exactly a low facility. I've made the acquaintance and have a couple of relatives who've lodged at the fine Pontiac establishment. They're in Joliet, which is now gone or closed. Pontiac's downstate in Pontiac, Illinois.
Yeah, and Joliet was they closed it now. I think they do ghost tours, but I've had a few relatives that hung their hat there for a while for various reasons. So yeah, it's not a place to be. It's not a swing club for sure.
No, but they tell me that places like Vienna years ago was like a low risk, a very walk in the park farm.
Right.
You know, it was easy going. I guess Pontiac was filled with street gangs, tough guys, and
Yeah, I didn't hear very many pleasant stories coming out of there.
why they never put him in protective custody, I will never know.
I mean, your involvement went all the way to the Helen Voorhees Brock kidnapping and eventual murder, and that was part of how the Peterson-Schustler.
Now, Vic Spelatro was involved in that.
Yeah, and Silas Jane, another sweetheart, and
all these sweethearts. You know, when you say sweethearts, it reminds me of when Frank used to say, Frank Schweis, he'd say, "Oh, you know the guy that had the accident."
Yeah.
The guy that had the accident. Yeah, an accident. He was blown to pieces. You know?
Yeah. Well, I'm being facetious for sure.
That's the way he used to do it. He used to talk like that. He used to say, "You know the guy that had the accident." And I'd stop and I'd think about it. Accident? No. So when you say sweetheart, I'm thinking about, okay.
Yeah, well, they were so notoriously soft and cuddly. You have to kind of give them those.
I don't know.
He got it in the end, and so did a lot of people. Which brings me to another darling, sweetheart, cuddly guy, Frank, the German Schweis.
Also got it the same way. He was in 1987 on videotape. He had just come back from Mayo Clinic, and he told me he was going to be out of town for a while. And he just showed me a lump on the back of his neck, and he says, "Look at that." And I said, "Oh." He said, "I'm going to Mayo Clinic. I'm going to see about it." And he came back and he says, "I bought myself 10 years, son." He said, "I've got cancer."
Oh.
And that's eventually what he died of. He suffered a lot before he died.
Right.
A lot. It went into bone cancer, brain cancer. He had prostate cancer. He had cancer of the liver, cancer of the kidneys. I mean, it just ate him up inside.
Well, I mean, considering what his reputation, I mean,
He
that's
suffered. He suffered.
Yeah, well, rightfully so, I think, probably, because he sure made a lot of other people suffer. But you were right there with him. You had to, I think you videotaped his stories, didn't you? Or you had cameras set up, and what's it like being in a room alone with that guy?
I wasn't really alone. I mean, there was somebody around. My partner was in there kind of off to the side, and he used to sit down in another chair way across the room, and he leaned back and put his hands, and there was a Walther PPK that he kept underneath the cushion on the what's called. And he said, "If anything goes bad," and I said, "What's going to go bad?" He's going to jump over and shoot me? Not in my own home. If something goes bad, he's going to walk out the door, and then I got to watch myself for the rest of my life.
Right. Yeah. He was notorious, and you helped put him away as well.
Yes, I did.
Oh.
I gave him his first vacation. He had never been denied bond before.
Oh, really?
And yeah, we had so much on tape of him. He even said on tape, "I'm going out of town a while. I got to make a hit."
Wow.
On tape. So when they presented that before Joan Lefkoe, the magistrate, she said he's not eligible for bond, and it was the first time in his life. He'd been arrested more times than his age.
Wow.
And this was the first time he never got bond.
Lefkoe, wasn't she the judge who someone broke into her house and Edgewater and killed her husband?
That was during Family Secrets.
Oh. I wonder if it was connected. I bet you it was.
No.
You don't think so?
No, everybody jumped on it right away. The U.S. Marshals were over there. And
yeah, I remember that. They killed her husband, I think.
I don't remember the facts on it, but I do know everybody in the office. I was in town for 2 months before the actual trial. I used to go down to the Dirksen building every day. And when it came out, it was like everybody was like red alert, you know?
Yeah.
They thought what you thought. It could have been connected, but it wasn't.
No, just coincidence. So I wonder now, I asked you before, but so now it had to have been pretty hard. I don't know I'm sure you remember where you were when you heard that Tony was missing. It had to have been pretty difficult for you as a friend. I mean, putting aside his reputation and all that, as just a friend, to hear when they found the bodies, it had to have been a pretty bad week or month for you afterward, regardless of his, reputation outside of your relationship.
I really didn't know much about his reputation. I learned this later in life. And Schweis told me a lot about, he told me, that they beat him to death. And he was looking for reaction on me. But when I actually heard that he was missing was on the news. And as soon as I heard it, I was busy doing other things with business. And the first thing that came to my mind was he didn't stop by.
Yeah.
He didn't stop by and see me. And if he's missing, he's dead.
Yeah. I think that was the consensus amongst most of his closest associates at that time.
Well, Alan Ackerman lived right down the street from me. He lived in Schweis's old home.
Right.
And which really wasn't old, it was extravagant. But he went on TV and he said, "Oh, they're probably out frolicking."
I remember that clip.
Home and I'm looking. I know Alan. And I'm thinking to myself, "Yeah, right."
I remember seeing that clip on the news. He reminded me of Kramer from Seinfeld, kind of the way he was talking. They're out on frolic, I think he said, or something to that effect.
Yeah, he did. He said they're probably out frolicking.
Yeah.
And he said the worst thing they're going to be looking at is a divorce court or something
right.
like that in the morning.
I remember that clip. I remember it like, yeah.
It upset me so much. I grabbed a couple bottles of scotch and went upstairs from my place where I met everybody. I locked myself upstairs for about 2 weeks and just drank.
I imagine.
It bothered me a lot. I cried.
Yeah. I would guess that it probably bothers you to this day a little bit. You have little twinges here and there. I mean, because, when you like somebody,
when somebody brings up like on a comment on something and says to me, "That's your guy, you like murderers, you like people who did this, or that was a close friend of yours, what kind of people do you," a nasty comment.
Right.
They don't understand how I feel or how other people feel. They're looking at it because they did research. They never had a relationship with anybody like that.
Yeah, I could understand. I understand.
I asked Adam Flowers. I asked him about his relationship with Tony, or not with Tony, with
Frank
Collada. And I said, "Didn't you guys ever sit around and talk about things?" He said, "Oh yeah, all the time." And I said, "Did it ever upset you?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Well, that's how I felt about Tony. I mean, it just wasn't that kind of thing."
Well, and in your case, you didn't know till later on a lot of the stuff anyway, but I mean, you were friends. When you're friends with somebody, it's just like being in love. You're just willing to overlook some of those things that you have nothing to do with. You're just friends, and that's it. And so you have every right to be upset when something happens to them. Those people, those keyboard warriors, they got something to say about everything. So
yes, they do. Some of them.
Yeah.
I would say they're about maybe 2% that I run across.
Yeah. No, they're always around. I don't know. I get them occasionally too. That's how it is. But another real gentle and loving soul was that you made an acquaintance of was Mad Sam DiStefano.
Gentle and loving soul. Frank Collada said he was the devil himself.
I think he probably was. And I told you, my mother hated nobody on this planet, but the mere mention of that guy's name would send her into a tizzy. She couldn't stand anything about him, not even the name. And so you had a friend of yours did you a big favor and brought you into an encounter with him. Would you share that with us?
The incident that I went to his place was Kurt had told me to kind of take care of Kenny and drive him around. He didn't have a driver's license. He had a lot of things that were wrong legally. And he had some problems with his business. So I took care of that. But I went to pick him up and didn't know where I was going. And he just told me, he said, "We're going into the city." He lived in Tinley Park, 17201 South Central. And so I picked him up And we were driving on the expressway. Naturally, get in the city. I got off, and he says, "Now turn here, turn there, turn here, turn there." I didn't know where I was going or what it was about. So we finally get to Sam's house, and he said, "Pull in the driveway," and the door opened, the garage door, and he said, "Go ahead and pull inside." I was driving his car, and he had an Asumi, his Doberman Pinscher, in the back. And so there was a guy there that met us and walked us into the kitchen. And as we walked into the kitchen, Anita was there. Hanson was in front of me.
Right.
And Anita was very nice lady. She was cooking some kind of a spaghetti sauce or whatever. It was very good. And she had some homemade bread that she baked. And she broke a piece off and she dipped it in. And she says, "Would you like some bread?" And I said, "Yeah, tomato bread,
Right.
So it was very, very good. Excellent. And I thanked her. And everything was copacetic and quiet. Hanson goes down in the basement. I'm following him down the steps. And off to the one side, we were on the right-hand side, there was a square table like you might find in a restaurant.
Right.
Like maybe 3.5 feet or three feet square with
Right.
a tablecloth on it, like a vinyl tablecloth. And then there was a love seat over on the side, or a small couch, but it wasn't a big couch. It was
Right.
it probably if you squeezed 3 people on it, you were lucky. But they told me to sit down there. This guy told me to sit down. We sat there and waited, and a few minutes later, maybe 10 to 15 minutes later, Sam came down the steps, and he was in his pajamas and robe, and he had an ornery attitude. He sat down across from Kenny. He was facing me. Kenny was facing the other direction. And he said, "You know why you're here, Kenny?" And he said, "No, Sam." Very passive. Kenny was gay, okay?
Right.
He said, "You know why you're..." They were both sexual perverts, but Sam liked little girls, he liked little boys, So he said, "No, Sam, why?" And he said, "Kenny, you know why you're here." They went through the spiel over and over again. And he said, "I'm going to kill you." Right there, my ears are perked up. I'm thinking to myself, "That's the wrong place." And I'm kind of surveying the room. And there's 2 guys down there. And I noticed, the things I noticed were the altar
Right.
that was there. It was like a religious altar. It had candles. It had a pentagram on the wall behind it. Very satanic. And a black cloth going over. And I looked at it and said, "Okay, this guy's weird." And then I looked around the room, and the floor was tiled, but there was a drain in the center of the floor. And I looked at that and said, "This is really not the kind of place I want to be." And it looked to be soundproof, very much. But he argued with him over and over and over again. And Sam really did the arguing. He was kind of quiet and passive through the whole thing. And finally, he said, "I'm going to kill you." And he was screaming at him. And he turned around. He had his head kind of down like this. And he turned around and said, "Sam, when I'm gone, would you do me a favor?" He said, "Kenny, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. Don't you understand? You're asking for a favor? I'm going to kill you." And he just didn't say anything. It was quiet the whole time. And finally he says, "What do you want? What do you want from me?" And he said, "Sam, when I'm gone, would you take care of my dog? She's up in the car." He said, "Get out of here. Get out of here." Well, that was my cue. I was halfway up the steps. And he was behind me. On the way out, Anita asked me, she said, "Would you like some more tomato bread?" And I said, "No. No, thank you." Smiled, and I just walked out the door, got in the car, started the car. He got in the car, and I got out of there, and I told him, I said, "Don't you ever put me in a position like that again. Ever."
I bet you took him off the Christmas list after that, I bet.
Oh, yeah. Not really. I had certain things I had to do. But when I told him that, I said, "Don't ever do that again." I said, he could have, I could have got killed.
Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah, maybe." I mean, that's the way he looked at it. Yeah, maybe.
Man, well, that piece of tomato bread could have been your last meal.
Yeah, the Last Supper.
Yeah, exactly. In the worst place in the world. And you've got to wonder, I know that they killed the Spelatros. I think it was determined it was in a basement in Bensonville, but they probably had basements set up like his in various spots where they could do stuff like that. You'd have to
Mario
guess.
had one. Mario Stefano had one.
Was Mario the one that helped Tony kill Mad Sam?
Yes.
And I think Mad Sam killed the younger brother for being in drugs prior to that, didn't he?
That was 1952, I believe. But
real sweetheart family.
Yeah, well, they were on trial for Leo Foreman's murder, and Sam was arguing with the press, public talking to the press, and Tony was on trial with him. I've seen the videos of it.
Yeah, I've seen.
And it was Mario, his brother, that told him, "We're gonna get, convicted because of Sam." Right. And so they kind of jointly decided that he should go. So I'm sure they got permission, and I'm sure it was given easily. At that time, I believe Ayupa was in charge, and people say that all he did was say, "Yeah, okay, you want to do it."
You always had to, even if they're old and they look like they're sweet little grandfathers, they can pick up the phone and create all kinds of hell for anybody they want to. So, which
we talked about that. We talked about that with Joey Lombardo. A lot of people said, "Oh, poor Joey, he went to prison." And I said, "Yeah, the minute Joey wanted to, if he turned on you, all he could do was talk to somebody and say, 'I don't ever want to see that guy again.' And believe me, the guy was gone. He was embraced."
I saw him. I didn't wait on him, but I did see him at a restaurant that I worked at, and he was an odd guy. I would say he was kind of he was an odd guy. I'll just leave it at that. But I waited on a few of them, but I never knew them. I certainly didn't have the knowledge like you have of their ins and outs and their things. But I knew of their reputation because the news told me what it was, but I didn't have any firsthand knowledge. I wanted to show you now. You were involved, same with me, in the Rush Street area and down in Old Town and everything. So I was digging through a huge box of matchbooks I have, and a lot of them come from. I got to put on my glasses because I'm 136, but they do a good job of makeup, so I don't look a day over 87.
I may have to do the same thing.
Well, you got good genes. You're all right. So I have Fritzels. I know you know Fritzels. I'm sure you've heard of that.
Yes.
Yeah. But the steak joint on Wells.
Oh, yeah. I used to go there a lot.
I figured. I thought I'm going to bring these guys. You're going to say, I know the owner. I know this guy.
That's been gone for years.
Yeah. Art's Grill. This was 126 South Wells. I don't know if you...
I never went there.
No. La Strada, which was 1531 North Wells.
That was up by Piper's Alley.
Yeah, La Strada. I think they moved to Michigan Avenue and like Randolph and Michigan later on, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
And the Timeout Cocktail Lounge, which was on 1200 Leland. So I don't know if you would have gotten up
No,
that
I never went there. Never heard of it either.
And the Black Orchid. I know you've known that.
Yes. That was a very popular place.
Yeah, but here's one I think you'll like. Because I was surprised that I had this. But it's the Old Town Ale House and Gallery.
Yes. And that was a very, very lucrative place. It was a
227 West North Avenue, it says.
Yeah. It was around the corner on North Avenue.
Yeah. And then
it was still part of Old Town.
Petite. I don't know if you'd know this one. Petite. This was a 139 West North Avenue called Petite.
Petite Lounge.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tended bar there for a while.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew this would bring back a few memories.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Here's the one. I've seen this artwork. I just can't. I don't know if it was on Rush Street or Wells Street, but see what you think, because it doesn't say. What do you suppose that was?
The Midas Touch.
Is it?
Yeah.
See, I knew you'd know.
Midas Touch.
Good, because I couldn't figure out where this is from. I
No,
know
that's
I've
the
seen it.
Midas Touch. I
Yeah,
attended
I've
bar
seen
there.
it, but I couldn't remember. I know I've seen it. Where was it?
Yeah.
On Rush Street, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's empty, but yeah. And then I have others from Rush Street that are kind of fun. I thought you might know these guys actually. This is at 14 West Elm, which was right down 10 feet from my dad's place, called the Grapevine.
Oh, yeah.
And it says inside your host Joe Bonafides and Joe DeSalvo.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I look at this nostalgically because of the club names, but more nostalgic than that is try to get a book of matches from someone anywhere nowadays. Nobody smokes, nobody has any matches.
Well, not only that, my mother, when she passed away, I didn't realize it, but I took her things out of her before she passed away in my home. But I took her things out of her home, and there were matches in there that she could strike on the wall or anything, and you can't buy those in stores anymore.
No, you can't get. If you go to, I defy you to go to any restaurant or anything and ask for a book of matches. It's not going to happen.
And the older books of matches had the striker on the same side that you lifted out. The other ones had it on the back. I think they changed that in like 1974, 1975.
People
and put
were
the
lighting
striker on the
themselves
back because too many people were lighting them, and the whole book could go up in flames.
Man, it's unreal. And I've got a whole shoebox full. But some of those names, I mean, I have some others, but some of those names, Fritzels and the Black Orchid.
Each one of them is a memory. Each
Mr.
one
Kelly.
of them is a memory.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure of it. I'm putting them together in a collage, and I'm going to put them in a frame. The most popular ones. I have Shea Paul where I worked.
That's a classic. To
Yeah, I
have one
got
of those,
several, and I have several ashtrays. I took a lot of
those
stuff
ashtrays from Shea Paul. You got one?
Yeah, I got several. Yeah. I took them when they were closing up. I said, well, they were just going to throw them away. I guess the AMA owned the building and weren't going to let them renew. They weren't doing very well. They were struggling. And when they closed, all that stuff was there. So I was allowed. She told me to take whatever I wanted, so I did. And
That was nice of her.
well, she didn't care. She didn't want to move it. She just wanted to dump it. They were going to dump it. They sold some of the stuff to other restaurants. It wasn't marked, but if it said Shea Paul, what are you going to do with it? And I have Shea Paris, a matchbook, which
It's part of history.
Yeah, Mr. Kelly's where my dad worked. I have a couple of matchbooks from. So, yeah, if there's one that you're interested in, I'd be glad to send you one.
Everybody loved Mr. Kelly's.
Yeah.
Mr. Kelly's had the best entertainment. I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but Barbara Streisand, she made her career right there.
Yeah. I have a matchbook from a place called Easy Street that was on Rush Street. Do you remember that place?
Oh, yeah.
I remember the sign in my head. And
Easy Street.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, when I was down there was Manhattan. Was one of the had the black sparkly sidewalk out in front, which I thought was cool. And but that's changed. I don't know if you've been there on Rush Street lately, but it looks like a mall.
I haven't been to Rush Street since 1987.
Yeah, it looks like a mall now. There's Sunglass Hut and Orange Julius and stuff like that. The club scene is pretty much, I think, over with. Now every neighborhood has its club area. You know what I mean? It's not like it was.
That's something that I kind of liked about Chicago.
Yeah.
I don't find it anywhere that I've ever traveled. But neighborhoods where people live in Chicago, they have their watering hole on the corner.
Yeah.
They have a tap on the corner, or a neighborhood bar.
Yeah.
You don't find that in many cities.
Well,
you can find it in Philadelphia. You can find it in Pittsburgh. But most neighborhoods where people live, they don't have a tavern that they hang out in.
No, and even
they
in
go
Chicago,
to a night spot.
Chicago, it's getting to be a scarcity too. You still see the old Schlitz relief that they would put up there if you bought Schlitz products, but that was actually Mike Royko's lament 40 years ago, that the neighborhood bars were going away, and that was where real Chicagoans went and discussed business and discussed their lives and unwound after a day at the slaughterhouse or wherever it happened to be. So.
Well, most of us, I had old style. I had a big old style sign out front that
Yeah. Well, they would get into different.
get the light and light it up at night.
Yeah.
Either old style, Schlitz, Hams.
Hams. Yeah.
Just really, they were very artistic. Budweiser had
The
Anheuser.
the Hams one had a guy with a crew cut and holding a mug of beer, as I recall.
Frosted.
Yeah.
Frosted, yeah.
I remember those signs being everywhere when I was younger in Chicago. And I remember, I'm sure you remember, on I think it was Lake and State Street, they had the Marlboro or Winston cigarette guy that blew smoke rings. Do you remember?
Yes. I don't know what they blew the smoke rings out with, but the hand moved
And
electronically, or moved up and down like this, and the smoke rings would just blow out.
Sail out over Michigan Avenue. Yeah, one every couple of minutes. It was, and kids thought that was great, and they took up smoking probably after they saw it. It's so yeah, those days are over.
Yeah, but people from other parts of the country have no idea that these kind of places existed.
Oh yeah, it's the neighborhood bar thing is.
If you didn't grow up there or be around there or go to visit there, even if you came in from the suburbs to see what it was like, it was totally different.
Well, the further west you go, the less you're likely to run into that. I know New York has some neighborhood taps and stuff, and Philadelphia, of course, and Pittsburgh. But as you get past Chicago, it becomes more and more scarce till it doesn't exist at all. Neighborhood taps, I think, probably end at St. Louis, if I had to guess, or in that general area.
I don't think they want alcoholic beverages served in their neighborhood where they live.
Well, back in the day, neighborhoods controlled their own, so to speak. And now,
not only that, people didn't get out of hand. Back in the day, it wasn't DUIs or anything else. They walked home.
Right.
I mean, they'd have a few drinks. Honey, I'm going down to the bar. I'll be back. The bar.
They knew better than to act up in the neighborhood because the neighbors would, give them what for, and that'd be the end of it. So,
not only that, a good owner or bartender would shut them off. If they've had too much to drink, he'd say, "It's time for you to go."
Right.
And he'd send them home because he knew that the guy would come back and spend more money. If he left in a bad way, or if the police had to be called, it was going to be a problem.
Right.
So I would say anybody that wanted to make any money tried to take care of their people.
Yeah, it's just a different world, which is why I started this channel. I wanted to bring people back to when things were just a little different. You know what I mean? I miss all of that.
They were better.
I think so. They just, there was just more to them. There was more things to see. That Vegas had headline entertainment. Now I watch television. I hear these names. I don't know who these people are. I wouldn't know them if they ran into me or fell out of the sky and landed on top of me. I have no idea. They tell me they're big stars, but I don't know who they are. But you knew who Dean Martin was. You knew who Frank Sinatra was. No mistake in it. You could see for 5 blocks away. Oh, that's Dean Martin. Now these stars, I've never heard of them. I don't know what they do. And
they tell me the biggest stars now are rap singers, and I've never been into rap music, so.
Yeah, or just they're in movies that I've never seen or never heard of, and they look like they're 12 years old. I just never. And the big stars, I think, are gone. I really believe there's no such thing as big stars anymore.
There's a guy.
All that.
There's a guy on Facebook today that posted a picture of Barbra Streisand in front of Mr. Kelly's, and she actually has a YouTube that talks about it.
Oh, really?
And he put that under it after I made a comment, because what he put on it under the comment was, he was kind of reminiscing, I guess. Gary's that guy. But he said, underneath it, he says, "Those were the days, my friend."
Yeah.
And so
I thought they'd never end.
Yeah. We sing and dance forever and a day. And I know that song.
I do too.
She sang that live at Mr. Kelly's, and she said that launched her career.
Well, Mr. Kelly's was a place to be seen back in those days. And funny enough, there was a place that you don't really hear much about, but the sign was there forever, called Club Alabama.
Yes.
That sign must have been there until 1995. I don't know what happened. The club had closed in like 1970, but that sign remained there hanging above Michigan Avenue in Chicago for I don't know how long. It's like the Allerton Hotel, the Tip Top Tap. That sign is still there. Believe it or not, I think it's been closed now 50 years.
The Tip Top?
Yeah, the Tip Top Tap at the Allerton Hotel. That sign has been there as long as I can remember, and I know that club closed at least 1970, 1973, something like that. They used to do a radio broadcast from there every Sunday, like a big, like almost like American Bandstand. So it was a popular place, but it's probably just a meeting room now or a storage room. But that sign is still there.
That's another thing that I miss from Chicago is you could turn on, we didn't have FM yet, but you could turn on the radio and there might be something going on at Playboy or something like that. And there was an MC with a host and introducing.
The Aragon Ballroom was notorious for having big broadcast dances and things. Sure.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But those, not anymore.
That's where my father met my mother in the Aragon Ballroom. Right after he came home from Germany after World War II, and that's where they met. Yeah. And she liked to dance. She was a big dancer.
There was a nice little Italian fellow that owned the place called the Green Mill right down the street.
I used to shoot pool there as a kid. When I was 16, 17 years old, you couldn't go into a bar, but I did. I used to shoot pool in there.
Yeah.
It was a rough joint. It was a very rough joint.
Well, that neighborhood was rough when I was growing up. The uptown, most of it was boarded up. The Riviera was gone, and the uptown theater was gone. It was like a war zone over there in the 1970s.
Well, yeah, but before that, all those theaters like the Uptown, the Riviera, there were several along there. I can't remember all their names, but they all were very ornate on the inside, very lavish. And they were built in the 20s or something like that. But I actually went to them when they had movies in them. So I watched them deteriorate to go to nothing.
I saw movies at the Riviera. By the time I was old enough to go to movies, the Uptown was closed and shuttered. I used to go to the Granada on Sheridan Road in Devon.
Yes.
But I think those are all, what do you call, can't think of the name of the family that built all those. But
they were built by studios.
Yeah, there was a guy, I can't remember his name. Actually, the guy...
And the studios sold them off because they had releasing problems. Originally the studios wanted to control each theater.
Right.
So if it was from Fox, like if you went downtown to the RK Oriental, it was from RKO.
Right.
If you went to the Fox, or one of the Fox owned one down there, it was a State and Lake. Those were all owned by studios.
United Artists, which was the studio.
UA was down there. So if you went in there, it was only their release. And later on, after all the problems and everything, they sold the properties off. The studios sold the properties and most of them became not nightclubs, but concerts. Where they
Riviera did. Later on, the Riviera became a concert venue. So did the Aragon. For the
Aragon was big on that. Very big on it.
But the
I like the layout. There was a tunnel from the Aragon to the Green Mill.
That's right. And there's a tunnel that goes to an apartment over near the train. The guy that owned the Green Mill gave somebody an interview, but he wouldn't tell where it enters or exits. He didn't want to get robbed, but Al Capone built those tunnels, he said, to get away if he had to, and get in and out.
I believe that was Jack McGurn's place originally.
Yeah, but Capone owned it at the end, and so he wouldn't tell where they open up at or anything. He's like, hey, I'll get robbed, someone will come in, and so he's right. But yeah, I saw it on one of the shows from Chicago. Pretty cool. I mean, he showed the door to the tunnel. He opened it up so you could see in the tunnel, but he wouldn't tell.
Well, now it's a very posh museum. When I saw it, it was a dirt on the floor, rough and tumble, place.
Right. Well, in the 70s, that was a rough area in general. I mean, I thought.
Oh, Uptown itself was crazy.
Well, once all the stores started closing, like Weebolt's and Goldblatt's, and people didn't go there to shop, that was the end for that, area. All that was left were seedy little bars, hobos. The heroin thing in the 70s was big in Uptown. That was the epicenter of...
It actually became dangerous to go see the Cubs.
Yeah. Well, that was rough, too. in that
Nobody
area.
wanted to go on Wilton Avenue in the back anymore.
Yeah. I know. I remember because I was in that area in those days, and so
I believe that was Addison, though. That was at Addison Street.
Addison, yeah, and Wilton was pretty rough all the way up until probably the mid '80s before gentrification took over and they started pushing from Lakeshore up Addison and gentrifying everything. But it was bad. It's like, you got to understand too, like Irving Park, you have the train there at Sheridan where it crosses Irving Park, and that was always rough. And beyond that was all graveyard, so all kinds of funny business happened there at night.
Wilson Avenue. Wilson was kind of a dividing line. They had a couple Indian places there, the War Bonnet and the Teepee.
Yeah, well, there was the Indian Cultural Center was on Wilson, right next to that men's club. I can't remember what the thing was called. It had a Bill Marovitz election sign on it all the way up till the 2000s. You could still see it. Yeah, remember Bill Marovitz? And with a smiley face, vote for Bill Marovitz. But
blast from the past.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm trying to do here, and you're a big part of that, Mr. Wemette. So I thank you very, very much for the opportunity.
You're welcome.
I hope you'll come back, and if I find any more interesting stuff in my collection, I'm going to share it with you and get the insight. See, now I know this is the Midas touch.
Yeah.
And I know it was on Rush Street. So now I can look it up and I can know what I got here, because I was looking at it like, I've seen that before. I just can't tell where. So now I know.
Well, if I gave you enough footage where you could...
Oh, no, you gave me plenty. Like I said, I could end up with 2 videos out of it. So, but always come back anytime you want. I'd love to have you back. So, and I'll let you go to bed finally.
All you have to do is invite me.
It's open invitation anytime. But thank you again, Mr. Wemette. Thank you, and I'm glad we got the chance. I'll send everything to you.
Have a great night. God bless you.
Thank you. See you later.